Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In keeping with the February theme I've been doing of singleness, dating, relationships, for today's video I want to round up the best sermon series and podcasts on Christian dating and relationships that I personally have listened to. I love listening to this type of content and just gleaning wisdom from it, and the resources I'm going to be sharing in today's video are the ones that have really influenced me the most in terms of how I view all these different stages, how I view singleness, dating, marriage, and really what the purpose of each of those things are and what the goal should be in it. And so I have learned so much from these resources, and I really hope that you do too. And then also, if you are more of a reader, I am going to be sharing at the end of this video the top 5 books I have read on this topic, including my all-time favorite that I really just think everyone should read regardless of relationship status. If you're new to my channel, I do all sorts of faith-related content. I love doing Bible study videos and just addressing different topics from a biblical perspective. And then I also do some lifestyle videos, and I'm planning to start to get more into that side of things as well. So please be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Also, I wanted to mention that all the resources I'm going to be talking about will be linked below in the description box if you do want to check those out. Without further ado, here are the 7 best sermon series and podcasts on Christian dating and relationships. Number 1 is the Loveology series by Bridgetown Church in Portland, Oregon. This one is done by John Mark Comer, and I love it because it takes a look at what the Bible has to say on all things love, sex, romance, and marriage, and it's really looking at the theology of each of these things. As they say, it is a look at what the Bible has to say on the never-ending story of male and female. Number 2 is the EV Free Fullterton Sex, Love, and God podcast. My favorite part about this podcast series was when the pastor Mike Erie unpacks the Song of Solomon to show how it can actually give us a guideline of 3 things to look for in a spouse. And I love this because it's not something I would have caught in reading it on my own, but he really unpacks the historical context to help us understand what the passage is saying about what is to be valued in a spouse. Number 3 is the series #Relationship Goals by Transformation Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This one is by Pastor Mike Todd, and it is just filled with so much wisdom and so many little nuggets to glean. One thing that stood out to me about this series is an analogy that he gives on God's design for sex within marriage. I feel like I've heard a lot of these different analogies within Christian culture, but this one was really just so powerful, and it really stood out to me, and it was so good. Number 4 is a series by Ben Stewart called Single, Dating, Engaged, Married, and I really don't even know where to start with this series. There's so much goodness packed into it. I love that he addresses really the purpose of each of these things. What is the purpose of singleness, the purpose of dating, the purpose of marriage, and I think understanding that purpose really brings a lot of clarity as to how to approach those different things. And so he covers a lot, and then he also just provides a lot of biblical wisdom on really practical things like who should we date and what should we look for in a person we date, and what are biblical principles of wisdom we can apply to the dating process that we can just pull from these different Bible stories. Number 5 is the dating series by The Porch. The Porch is, I believe, a young adults group from a church in Texas, and they actually have a ton of different relationship series, but the one I want to highlight is one I listened to recently, and it's their fantasy series. So they've got a sermon on the fantasy guy, the fantasy girl, fantasy marriage, and fantasy love. And really what it is for each of those things, they're taking a look at different Bible passages that can be applied to sort of give us a really clear list of those things. So what to aspire to be in a godly guy, or what to look for in a godly guy. And then also for girls, what to aspire to be in a godly woman and what to look for in that if you are a guy. And then for love and marriage, it's taking a look at what the Bible has to say on what the quote unquote fantasy version of that should be, or what the ideal version of that should be. And so there's a lot of wisdom in those series. Number 6 is the Dateology Podcast, and this one's actually really cool because it is done by some people out of Reality San Francisco, which is a church near me. And I love this one. It's really unique because, like all these other series we've been talking about, it does address all these different aspects of dating, singleness, relationships, marriage, all this stuff, but it comes at it from a very unique perspective because the 2 people who run the podcast, one is an MFT, so she's a licensed therapist, and then the other is a pastor at a church. So it's kind of coming at it from both a theological perspective and then also a psychological perspective, and it's just so interesting. And then they also go into some more topics that are a little bit unique from the other series, like family of origin or childhood wounds, or how all that stuff kind of affects what we're bringing into a dating relationship or marriage. And so there's lots of good stuff in this one as well. And then last but not least, number 7 is the New Rules for Love, Sex, and Dating by North Point Community Church out of Atlanta, I believe, and that is done by Andy Stanley. If you have ever heard the phrase become the person you're looking for is looking for. This is where that comes from. And so I love this series because it kind of approaches it from this idea of, instead of focusing so much on our list and what we're looking for, we need to make sure that we're actually ourselves living up to those same standards. And so it focuses a lot on us growing more into the image of God, us growing those qualities that we want in another person, and how that is ultimately going to lead us in the right direction in terms of building a good relationship. All right, so those were my top sermon series and podcasts. Now I'm going to quickly go through some of my favorite books on this topic. So first up, we have got Swipe Right by Levi, Lusko. Am I saying that right? But this one basically kind of just debunks our current dating culture and really brings a biblical perspective to that. As you can tell from the play on words, it is talking about dating apps sort of, but really just a lot more than that. And this one was super good. Number 2, Loveology. This is the book that very first sermon series I mentioned is based off of, the Loveology series by Bridgetown Church. And so again, this is really going into the theology of all things God, love, marriage, and sex. And there's so much biblical wisdom in this book. I mean, it's John Mark Comer, so really that tells you everything you need to know. He's great. Number 3 is The Sacred Search by Gary Thomas. He also has a book, The Sacred Marriage, for those of you married couples out there. I've heard that one's really great, but I'm just going to go ahead and read this subtitle. It says, "What if it's not about who you marry, but why?" And so I really loved this book because it goes into the purpose of marriage, which in turn really informs how we date and who we date. And so this one has really practical wisdom as far as the dating process. Number 4, Single, Dating, Engaged, Married. Again, this is the book version of that sermon series I mentioned by Ben Stewart, and he is with Passion City Church in DC, I believe. I just love Ben Stewart. He has a really unique way of being able to pull just really profound insights from Bible stories that I think are really easy to miss in just reading over them or in being super familiar with them. And so he just pulls out a lot of that to provide super practical wisdom for dating. Now for my all-time favorite, it is none other than Tim Keller. This book is so good. I first read it back in college for a Theology of Marriage and Family class I took, and again it's kind of going into the purpose of marriage that I think sometimes we overlook or don't realize, but it is honestly so applicable for just the Christian walk and kind of just talking about how God works in our life, what that journey looks like of walking with Him. And so this book, honestly, regardless of your relationship status, I really think any Christ follower should read this. Can't recommend enough. All right, so there you have it, a plethora of resources on Christian dating and relationships. I hope that this helps just point you in the right direction if this is something that you're wanting to learn more about or grow in. I would also really love to hear from you if there are sermon series or podcasts or books that I didn't mention here that you really love that have impacted you, and so leave a comment down below if you have suggestions on that. If you are new to my channel and you don't know, I do have some videos on singleness and dating, and so if you want to check those out, I will leave a couple of them linked below. But that is all for this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and let me know if you check out some of these sermon series and podcasts, what you think of them. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.